Hello again, this is a chapter 9 video, and in this chapter we're going to be looking at overriding methods, static dynamic types and supercalls in methods. Okay, so let's have a consideration of our current class hierarchy in our network project. We've got our newsfeed class, and we have our post and message post and photo post hierarchy. Now, when we want to display one of our posts, at the moment the display method is stored in the post method. At the moment we cannot get access to that display in the message post of photo posts. So let's just consider this problem a little further. Here is what we want. So we want to be able to access both the messages and photo information provided by the photo post and message post, but we also want to be able to access the username and timestamp which are accessed in the post. So we've got a bit of a problem here. If we try and implement the version 2 that we created previously, this is what we get. We get the username and the timestamp and then no comment. So I've created that version here. Here's our network version 2, and this shows you what effectively we get. That's what we get. All we can get is the username and details which are part of the post class. If we have a look in the post class, it's this display method which we're calling, and it's the username and timestamp which we're getting from here. Now the problem is we can't get what we need, which is the actual message or the photo post information. So the problem with this is inheritance really is a one-way street. A subclass can inherit the superclass fields, but the superclass knows nothing about subclass fields, so that's a bit of a problem. One potential solution, the wrong solution, but one solution which you could do was maybe place the display method in the subclasses. So you pull the display method out completely and put it in those message post and photo post subclasses. Now the problem now is, how do we get access to the username and timestamp? Because the username and timestamps are private fields stored in the post class. Only the post class can get access to those fields if they are private like that. Now we could make them public, but again that goes against our encapsulation idea, so we want to keep them private. So that's one problem. Another problem then is, because we've declared posts as our array list of posts, when we use the newsfeed class to call the display method from a post type, then we can't find it because it's no longer in the post class. So those are two fundamental problems which we really can't get around. So at this point we need to introduce an idea, because we've got different types which we're considering now. We just need to give you an idea so the terminology is easier from here on in. We've got two types. We've got a static type and a dynamic type. We're also going to look at method dispatch and lookup in a second, but before that let's have a look at static type and dynamic type. So here, consider these two assignments which we've encountered before. At the top we've got car C1 and then new car. So at the moment it's pretty easy to say what the type is at the top one. It's car, obviously. However, what about the bottom one? Now we've got vehicle and we're creating a new car. Now the new car is obviously a subclass of vehicle, so we can create that. But now, what is the type of V1? Well, it's a vehicle type, however it's storing a car type, so it gets a bit tricky. So what we do is we use this idea. The declared type is the static type, so in this case it's going to be vehicle V1. That is the static type. However, if it gets assigned with a subclass or another kind of type below it in the hierarchy, that's a problem. So we call the second part the dynamic type. So when the compiler compiles its code, the compiler's job is to check for static type violation. So it will look at the static type. So it needs to find, for us, that method needs to be found in the static type, which in our case will be posts. So if the display method is in the subclass, in the message post or the photo post class, then it will not find it, because it will, at compile time, it will check the static type. So the solution to all of these problems is called overriding, and this is overriding methods. Now this is very similar to overriding constructors, which we've touched upon briefly in the previous videos. So what we're going to do is we're going to override the methods so that you have both a display method in the post class and display methods in the message posts and photo posts. This will therefore satisfy both the static and dynamic type checking. So at compile time it checks the static type, fine, that works, and then during the dynamic phase, when it becomes a photo post or a message post, then it has those display methods in there as well. So the superclass and subclass define methods with the same signature. They must have the same signature. And remember, this signature means that the parameter list effectively must be the same and the name must be the same. Each has access to the fields of its own class. So again, if the fields are private, then only that class will have access to it, even if it's inherited. The superclass will satisfy the static type, and the subclass method is called at runtime, and it overrides the superclass version. So what happens of the superclass version? So let's just have a look at all of that in pictorial form. So here we have a static type which has been declared as a post type, and then the dynamic type is now photo post. So in this scenario, this is our previous scenario where we've got the display method stored in our photo post class. So what happens here? Well, the dynamic type, the photo post in this case, calls a method, has an external call to the display method. So in this case, it's fairly straightforward, it just calls its own display method, and we've seen this on a number of times before. How about in this scenario? So we've got our photo post type, but in our photo post class we don't have a display method. What happens in this scenario? Well, the compiler will ascend the hierarchy, the class hierarchy, looking for a method. Looks in the photo post class, can't find it. Looks in the post class, and then it looks there again. If, for example, it wasn't in the post class, then the next class up on the hierarchy, if you remember, will become the object class, so it'll look in the object class again. And if it's not there, then it'll have some kind of error. When we're considering method lookup, we're looking at the different classes, and you'll often find that a lot of classes will have the same methods in them within the hierarchy in order for this overriding to occur. So what happens now is the photo post dynamic type will look at its own class, and it will just work out straight away that that has its display method, and it'll use that one first. So in polymorphism, the first version is found. So in summary to these method calls, first of all, the static variable is accessed. The object stored in the variable is found, so in this case it will be the dynamic variable is then considered. The class of the object is then found, so the dynamic class. The class is then searched for that method match. If the method is not in the dynamic type's class, then we'll look for the superclass, and it will look for the method in that superclass. This will then repeat until a match is found, or the class hierarchy is exhausted, at which point there will be some kind of error. Overriding methods takes precedence, so any method which is overriding a method in its superclass will take precedent. So the only other problem that we've now got to do is access the fields. So that we identified that was a problem. How do we access the username fields, and how do we access the timestamp fields in our particular post class? So we often want to be able to use the display methods or the other methods that we're overriding. We often need to use those methods in the superclasses. So in the same way that in a constructor we can use the supercall, in overridden methods we can use the supercall as well. What we do is we use the word super, then define the method. So for us it'd be super.display, and then we can call that method. That will then get over the principle of encapsulation, and then we don't need to access those fields, and we can just set it so that we can configure the display method in our superclass as what we want, and we can get access to all of the fields we need from the superclass then. So our display class this will be in our photo post class is going to look something like that. Public void display, super.display, so we get the username and password, or username and timestamp information. Then it will do the bits and pieces which are local to that particular photo post, so in this case the file name and the caption. So, in summary, what we've been looking at now is we've been looking at polymorphic method dispatch. So polymorphic variable can store objects of varying types, and we've discussed the static types and dynamic types, and then we've also seen that method calls are polymorphic. The actual method call will depend on the dynamic object type which is into question. Okay, that's pretty much the main introduction to method polymorphism, and I've got some exercises for you to do there. Okay, see you next time.